Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mindset Matters. Today, we are kicking off a brand new series called He Said, She Said, where every month Jordan and I are going to have a new topic and we're going to give our his versus hers perspectives. So, thank you for joining it in and let's get into it. Hi, Jordan.
How's it going, Vic? It's good to talk to you
I
again.
I know Jordan was actually my very first guest, I think, back was that in June?
Yeah, that was early June. Yeah.
Before you even went where you are now. Where are you actually joining us from
Yeah,
today?
so your podcast has gone global. I'm all the way down under in Australia, so if I look tired, it's because I am. It's 8 a.m. here, so yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we had to find a time that worked for both of us, so it kind of had to be early morning for one of us at least.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna
thanks
be
for
good
taking
though.
that shift this time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your even like expectations for this podcast or how we know each other, like what's the dynamic here? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
cool. So I think you've advertised it really well on Instagram and on TikTok. So you've been doing such a great job with your podcast, and I find a lot of the times we talk about things and we share our different perspectives. And the last time we were chatting, we just kind of came up with this idea of, she said, he said, and that's what we're going to try to focus on is we're going to kind of, counteract our perspectives, see, if we have any differences as females and males, what we are in unison with, if there's any big contrast, and hopefully it'll give people a reason to either engage whether they disagree, agree, if they think I'm way out in left field. But I think it's going to give us an insight into each other's brains. So yeah,
I
I'm
love
looking
it.
forward to it.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like you and I have a good kind of banter and we often have these like deeper discussions where like we don't always agree. So I think that's a big thing too is I want to bring more voices on the podcast and I think having you like come in and repeat your perspectives but obviously different subjects will be cool. So I'm excited. Today we're going to be jumping into a kind of a dating and relationship type episode. And I thought this would be interesting for the first one because I think getting a guy's and girls' perspective on this subject is just something that people tend to gravitate to. So hopefully that will be good for us.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be good too because I don't think either of us are experts on this topic. So I think we're
Yeah.
approaching this as like realists of like these have been our struggles, and as average people, this is where maybe it's worked for us. This is where we've had difficulties, and I think we'll be able to kind of help each other out with our difference of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'll be good.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think I have some questions for you that are both like personal and like my own experiences that maybe it'd be good to get a guy's perspective. And then also, I did go to Instagram to ask the people what they wanted to hear, and we did get a few responses. So I thought we could start with one of kind of the scenarios that was brought to us, and
Cool.
then we can
Cool.
kind of go from there. So this person wrote in, I feel like I'm getting mixed signals from the guy that I'm talking to. What should I do?
Okay, that's an interesting one. Yeah, it's kind of tough to be too direct with that with all of the information. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think this could kind of go two different ways when I think of as a guy. One, I
Okay.
feel like guys in general can just be lazy in their energy sometimes. So they, just because there's mixed energy does not mean that they're not interested. I think that sometimes, you know, guys are really into something one moment and then they're just kind of relaxed and bored the next moment. So it could honestly just be that he's not giving her the consistent energy she wants, and maybe that's a sign for her that he's not the guy for her.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think when a guy is really into you, that it's typical for guys to come on strong. So maybe he's not into her as much as she wants. I don't know. Is there any more context provided in the mixed signals?
No, there's not that much context, so it's hard to really say. But it makes me think of like if he wanted to, he would. And I know there's like mixed debate even on this phrase of like, okay, but people also get busy and people like life comes up. But I kind of feel like if he's into you, maybe he would let you know, like, hey, having a really busy week, like if I fall off. Like, I don't know. I feel like, do you think a woman can like expect that type of communication or not even like at the
It's
beginning?
it's so funny. I feel like in some areas, guys are the most direct communicators, but I think they only really communicate directly with people that they're like comfortable with, and like I wouldn't tell
Mm,
someone. I mean, and that's why I'm curious. Like, if this is in the early stages, I I feel like guys think it's so great to be like mysterious and not overshare. And I don't know. I just think sometimes guys on purpose try to kind of give mixed signals. Um,
I know.
yeah, so I don't know. That's a tough
But I
one.
feel like if he's doing that, then that makes me like in my perspective, if a guy's giving me mixed signals, I'm like, okay, maybe this is a game too, but like that's not what I'm looking for, and I would
Right.
move on. So I think it depends as the woman too, of like, are you looking for something casual? Are you okay with it being kind of wishy washy? Because if you're okay with that from this person, then maybe like it's worth like pursuing still or bringing it up even, like I don't know, but I feel like if there's no intention behind their actions, or like actions and words aren't mixing, I don't know, I kind of feel
Yeah.
like they're not
We might need to get
interested.
a follow up from this listener of yours and try to get more details. And that would be a
Yeah.
kind of a cool thing to do with this is try to, you know, like if they're writing in and giving their responses, we can kind of check in with them. But yeah, it
Yeah.
all depends on what those mixed signals are. I really think so. I don't know. That's a tough
Mhm. Okay.
one. Yeah,
Okay, and one thing kind of on this subject, you once told me that you don't like, or that you actively avoid like double texting.
I do.
Can you
Yeah,
tell me more about that mindset?
this might be like a toxic male trait. I don't know, but I just feel like double texting is I don't know. It's almost well, maybe this is different when you're in that dating mindset. Like it almost feels like a defeat. Like oh, please respond back to me. And
Mm.
again, maybe that's just you know got to get that male pride out of the way. But I never liked to double text. I never wanted to seem like I was the one who was way more interested. So I don't know. Is that does that seem absolutely crazy to you?
I don't know. I think okay, what if it's like the conversation just like ends and you were the last one to say something? Would you
Yeah, for
then like a couple days later maybe like spark a conversation, or even then?
For me, it was always like if the conversation ended, that's a clear sign in itself. There's no I'm not gonna put CPR on this conversation and try to bring it
Really?
back. Like if the conversation died, especially in those early stages, it's like what am I gonna do? Like I'm not gonna force this to happen.
Yeah, but I mean, if it ends, I feel like you don't have to be texting constantly. Like, I'm not a big texter, so I would
Yeah,
actually almost rather the conversation end, because to me, that will say, will he actually reach out again, like a few days later? Whether it's me or him to end it, I don't really
see, but
care.
that feels like a game. Like I don't want to play games. Like if it's like you're leaving it to see am I interested, I don't want to be involved in that in the first place. You know?
I know, but it's more like if the conversation is naturally coming to an end. Like, for me, I don't text someone like days on end. Like, I
Right.
feel like if the conversation kind of just naturally comes to an end, then it's like okay, then you don't have to resuscitate it then, but I feel like revisit, and if you're interested you'll revisit it in a couple of days.
Yeah. I think that the way I texted in like my teenage years to like early 20s to now is so different. Like I
Yeah.
used to have full on conversations. Like we were just talking for the sake of talking when I used to text.
Yeah, me too.
Now like like texting is it's like logistical and
It's
that's about it.
last
Yeah.
resort too. Like, well, I think too it's like I don't want to get to know someone over text, so I think
Yeah.
my thing is like in the early kind of stages of talking, it's like I don't want a texting phase. Like, I would rather like it be a quick exchange, and then if you want to like meet up or like get together and then see if there's like an in-person vibe, I feel like
Right.
for me I just always appreciate that more, cuz what if you are texting and it seems like you're vibing, and then you meet them and then it's nothing, and then you're like, why did I waste my time texting you to get
Right.
to know you, like, you know?
The thing I would say, especially in those early stages, it can be really hard to like let someone down in person when you're not interested. Like it's a lot harder to be direct that you're not interested in that person, right? Like you're still if you're on a first date with someone, you're gonna engage in conversation even if the date's going horribly. You're gonna talk to them. You're gonna ask them questions that 15 minutes in you honestly might not care. But when it's text, it's so much easier to just be like, okay, this is boring. It's not interesting me. I'm just not
Yeah.
gonna respond. And it's like a passive aggressive way to be like, okay, not interested rather than
Yeah.
directly saying that. So for me as a guy, I was just like, oh, they're clearly giving me a sign over text that this isn't for them, and I don't want to come across as desperate or needy and message them twice. That's sort of the
Okay.
way I look
But
at
how
it.
do you think Okay, how quickly would you, or maybe have you, like when you were on like the dating apps, have you gone on many like Hinge dates over at one
No,
point?
no, I never. I
Oh,
went on,
okay.
I think, one in my entire life, and it
Oh,
didn't
okay.
go well. Wasn't for me.
Okay, that's something we have different experience in then. Actually, I recorded an entire podcast that's going out next week on like why I don't like dating apps. So
Yeah,
maybe we won't get too into this question, but one person actually asked, maybe you can answer this from your perspective. I think it was a guy who sent this in, but he said, I feel like online dating is killing my enthusiasm to even try.
yeah. I think that, so a lot of times when we think of online dating, like when you speak to most people, like my girlfriend, for example, she never did online dating. And I think that a lot of the reasons why people think, there may be some truth to this, is they like, oh, I don't like the superficial aspect of it, which is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're judging someone on their looks for the most part. I mean, I've talked to people where they're judging them on like certain comments that they have, like if they have like a very basic and repetitive, what's it called? You know, the prompts. They're like, oh, I'm not
Yeah.
interested. But I think for this listener's question, like it's killing my spirit. When you do online dating, there's so much rejection, either on your end or
Yeah.
the opposite end. Like if you're getting a pool of 100 people, you're probably saying no to what 80% of most of those people, if not more. And maybe this is just my own experience. You're not getting a like back from the vast
Yeah.
majority of the people you like. So it's I think that when you date in person, if you meet someone, you might have the courage to go up to, like if you're at a bar, you might have the courage to go up to one person a night, like maybe three, a night. And, maybe you get one out of those three. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
33% chance that someone has shown interest back on you, but it's a smaller pool. Whereas online dating, if you're going on that every single day on Hinge, I mean, that could be hundreds to thousands of people that you're swiping right on or that are swiping right on you. And I think that can be demoralizing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I think that's a good perspective, like from your part. I do have that episode, so I don't want to talk too much about it
I
just
got it.
because
Yeah.
I'm going to be dropping that next week. So if this
Looking
was your
forward to it.
question, come back next week. But I think that's a good perspective of like, yeah, it just kind of sucks. Like, it's not fun.
Yeah. No,
I don't know. I mean, and some people can be casual and have fun with that, and that's totally fine. But if you're not enjoying it, don't do it. Like, that's
yeah.
kind of how I feel. Okay, what else do we have? Ooh, this could be. Okay, how would you say like a woman should approach a man or like make the first move? Because I think, okay, I want to say
I
one
think,
more thing on this. I
yeah.
hear a lot about how guys, in some ways, kind of need their ego to like be pumped up a bit.
Yeah.
So for a woman to make the first move, for me, it's like seems scary. And like I have done it select few times. I think it also depends like where am I? What's the context?
I
Kind of
think,
thing. But how do you feel about like a woman approaching a man?
can I be as honest
Yeah.
as I want about this? I think,
Yeah.
I do not think there is a single restriction to this. All they have to do is approach. A guy just, I think that, we've romanticized this idea that guys have to approach the women. There's, this big way that has to go into it. And that can be so overwhelming to guys, I think. And again, I just think that guys are more often rejected by women than they're not.
Mm.
So when a
Because
woman
they try
approaches,
more times than women, probably.
exactly. So when a woman makes that first move on a guy, I think that's such a relief off guys' shoulders, first of all. And as you mentioned, it does stroke their ego, and they're like, oh yeah, like she wants me type deal. And
Yeah.
I think that it's really not a complex thing. It's just as long as there is a movement to it, guys are over the moon about it.
Okay. But what should I say? Like, if I'm going to approach a guy, if I see, like, let's say I'm out and I just see someone that's like, I'm like, wow, that guy's super attractive. And like, I'm like getting nervous. Like, what am I supposed to even say?
What you just said would make a guy's day. You're super attractive, and I'm super nervous to come talk to you. A guy's gonna think like, oh, because if the guy's attracted to you, he's. I think the
Yeah.
the thing that a guy's battling the whole time is there's no way she's into me, or she doesn't. She's too good for me type deal. The second that
Mm.
that like a woman breaks down that wall of whether or not she's into you, I feel like the whole struggle, the whole mind games that you're playing with yourself are down. So just be direct and honest. And I think that it's a pretty
Yeah.
good
It's
option.
so funny because I feel like both sides, like depending on your personality too, like some people are just super outgoing and like I don't know. I feel like too, I almost appreciate if a guy is a little more reserved than like the guy who's like hitting on every single person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't know, like some guys are super confident and out there, but then you kind of also think like, "Ooh, is he like a really big player?"
Yeah.
So in a way, I feel like it could be an advantage to like approach a guy first
Yeah.
if
And
he's like I don't know.
I think you're illuminating like one of the problems of this podcast that we're gonna have is like I'm one guy's perspective and you're one girl's perspective, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm trying to speak for like maybe the average Joe of a guy, which is which category I feel like I fall into. But
I don't know about that.
I'm sure there are some guys though that they really want to feel like maybe they're the ones that I do have to make the first move. Like they're more traditional. Whereas I'm sure there's guys on the complete opposite end of the spectrum where they want to feel like they're very stimulated, like mentally stimulated by a woman, and that they come on with they might want some seriousness. So there's a variety of different reasons, but I do think the majority of guys they will feel super relieved if they're not the one that has to make that move.
I think that's fair. And I think too it's like it all depends on context. Like I'm speaking so generally, but I'm trying to even
Right.
think of the last time that I was even in a situation like in person where I would have wanted to go up to someone. Like I feel like that's
Yeah.
even been so long. So I don't know.
Yeah. The situation is super relevant because I do think like when you don't know each other, when it's a stranger, I don't know why there would be an expectation where it has to be the guy or the girl. It's almost like if you're interested, go state your interest to that person. But sometimes, like for
Mm,
example, if you've been friends with that person for a while, or you already have some sort of relationship, whether it's someone at work, whether it's a friend, whether it's someone you've played on a sports team with, I think that the more time passes on, it's like, oh, someone's got to make the first move here. I feel like that usually defaults to the man. But I feel like,
mm,
when it's a stranger, and if you're giving the example you gave where you're at a bar, you find someone attractive, I mean, go state that person.
yeah. I know. And I think about different contexts. I'm like, I always feel like meeting someone in like a friendship first kind of environment is kind of nice. Like, I don't know if you have experience with this, but I always think of like, okay, if you're on like a sports team and like you're kind of flirting or like it's like you kind of have a bond already or like you're meeting someone in like a shared context. I feel
Yeah.
like that can take a lot of pressure off. But yeah, it's like at that point, if it's like harmless flirting or if I'm flirting and showing interest, then it's like I would kind of want the guy to like make a move if he's interested.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like when you say you want to know that person first, I think the hard part about dating is you feel like you're like, and I felt this for myself. Like I'll be honest, like when there was a period of my time where I was single for like 2 years, and I hated the idea of going on dates with people and wasting like time and money on
Mm,
someone that I just didn't like I wasn't gonna vibe with. And it was like
yeah.
I felt such a pressure to get an answer quickly because I didn't want to waste time. Or dates can be so expensive. But when you're
Yeah.
friends with someone, whether it's any of those settings that you described, I feel like you have more insight into that person already where you didn't have to go like seek out, are they a good match? Do we have similar values? Are they
Yeah.
funny? And it's like, okay, I feel more comfortable pursuing this person because I know it's not going to be a waste of time.
Yeah, and it's like when you're on a date, they're just if that's like the first context you've ever met them, I feel like it's they're obviously going to give you their best self for the
Yes.
next 2 hours or
Yeah.
whatever it is
Yeah.
versus when you're in that shared environment, like you kind of see who they are in like a
Right.
different setting and like then see if you vibe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something I struggle with cuz I'm like, okay, I kind of want to put myself out there a bit more this year like in those natural settings,
Yeah.
like not like I'm searching for like to meet someone, but just to like put myself out there so that the chances are higher that I meet someone interesting. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's hard because it's like, what does that context actually like look like, you know?
Yeah, I think just like you're describing, like the more ways you could be in scenarios where you're meeting people, like the better chances you're going to find someone that, vibes with you and you have similar interests with. So, yeah, I think that's great that you're putting yourself out there in more situations. Like, I know from, being friends with you, like you do a lot of things. Like you did the boxing, you're at the gym, you have a different social groups that you're in constantly. So the more situations you put yourself in, the more opportunity it is to meet different types of people. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, we have another question.
All right.
Someone said, I'm in a relationship and I'm not happy.
Oof.
And that's there's no other context.
Was it a guy who
But
wrote that?
I think so.
My
But
immediate
yeah.
brain went to that guy was just trying to hit on you. That was honestly all I got. I don't know if he had a genuine intention with that question, but maybe we could get my.
Okay, but we can say, like, in a general sense, what should you do if you're not happy in your relationship?
Yeah, I think that's tough because there's different stages of unhappy. There can be that's the overall theme of the relationship. It's we're not happy most of the time, and that's where you kind of get into those toxic relationships. Is when it's not making you happy, but you feel this attachment to that person where I can't let them go,
Hmm.
and that's not good. But the other side of that, and when you're in this, like it deep down, inside of you, where hey, this person is more than worth the tough time we're going through. We have a common values here, but we're going through a rough patch, and maybe that's because they're in a busy stage of their life, or you're in a busy stage of your life, or you're going through tough things individually, and I think it's okay for things not to be all sunshine and rainbows 24/7, and I
Hmm.
think that's the real way that you love someone when hey, there's a tough spell right here. We're going through an unhappy time, but I know that this person is worth it. So you just got to ask yourself like what am I getting out of this relationship? Like is this an unhappy time or is this an unhappy relationship? Because those are two very different things, I think.
Yeah, and I think, like, what is your goal for the relationship? Or are you staying in it because you're afraid of, like, starting over? I feel like that's something that a lot of people go through, which I feel like.
You said something that reminded me something of the last time we talked when we talked about this goal of a relationship thing. Do you remember when we were chatting about that like
Mm,
a month ago?
I don't really remember exactly what we said,
I think this
but
is one of
remind
the
me.
massive differences between guys and girls where the goal of the
Oh, yes.
relationship where I just can't I feel like there is only one goal in a relationship. It's either you marry that person or you break up with that. Like there's no for me I've
Yeah.
never had a relationship where like I want this relationship to help me grow as a communicator. Like I don't look at that as
Whereas the girls, that's my whole life. This is a lesson. If it
yeah,
doesn't work out, it will be a lesson.
I just it's so true. I've heard multiple friends of mine that are girls that are like, I know that I'm probably not going to marry this guy, but it's good for me. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, why would you waste
Okay.
your time with someone like that? Like, have you ever approached a relationship with a guy where it's like, this probably isn't for me long term, but we'll just see.
Um, well, I think that's more the difference between, like, a situationship versus, like, actually fully dating someone. Because for me, like, okay, I've been single for a long time, but I have had a couple, like, situationships. I would say one guy I really liked, and for me, it was going in a direction where I wanted it to be more.
Yeah.
But, like, it ended up being, like, he didn't feel like that. So it ended up not working out, and I ended it. But I've also been in a situationship where it was kind of like, you know what? I can tell he really likes me. This might sound bad, but it's like I knew for me it was like more of the convenience, like, yeah, like I like this person and I want to spend time with them, but
But
I know that I'm
is
not
it,
going to like fall in love.
isn't that just called hooking up? Like, what's the, so, because let me correct myself. When I talk about what the options are, there's a relationship, there's hooking up, and then there's nothing.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I guess like hooking up is like situationship, but I think for me a situationship is like you're not necessarily seeing other people. Well, actually maybe not. I guess if you don't haven't had that conversation.
yeah,
But I think that's like how I picture it, cuz like for me I'm not someone who likes to like talk to multiple people at once.
right.
But okay, then what's the differences between like just hooking up and then sometimes that turns into a relationship? Or do you feel like a guy knows his intentions
Don't
from
get
the
me wrong.
beginning?
Relationships can come from a variety of different ways. So you might, get into this thing where, yeah, this is just someone I hook up with, and then real feelings
And then
develop.
yeah.
But then when you enter into that relationship as a guy, I'm not like, I'm just getting into this relationship to work on my whatever. It's like I
Okay.
like this person, I'm gonna date them. But I do
And
feel that
then,
some girls approach guys with, this guy is great for me in this way. He's gonna get me out of my.
mm,
I've never thought of that with a person ever. I've only thought, is this person worth it? And the second that it's not like something I see long term, I want out of it. I don't want to waste my time to
yeah.
become a better
Okay.
cook with this person or a better communicator.
Yeah.
It's just like this is either my person or it's not.
Okay, but then in that situation, would you so I feel like some guys wouldn't get out of it. They'd be like, "Well, it's convenient and like I can be hooking up whenever I want." So then they would just stay in it.
Exactly. And you've identified where guys go. It's again, nothing, someone I can hook up with, or this is my person.
Okay, so how can a girl determine that from your perspective? So let's say someone is like in this situationship, they're hooking up. Maybe they start dating, but then it's like the guy is maybe out of it. Like he knows like this is just convenient at this point, but he's
Hmm.
like staying with it for now because like it's easy.
Yeah.
So how can like a girl like start sensing if that is happening? Like do you get
Yeah.
does that
There
even make sense?
No, this is one of the best skills for certain guys. And like there's a very like some guys they hide it so well. Right? Like they're able to make you feel and that's just a sign of like manipulation, honestly. It's like some
Yeah.
guys are able to hide the fact that they don't really like you and they're using you for one thing. Or, maybe they think you're on that same wavelength as them. And I think that, this is just true of almost every issue. The more you can directly communicate with someone, the better. And unfortunately, when you put yourself in, a dating situationship, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position where, someone might lie to you, someone might not be directly honest with you, and you can be hurt. You can have your time wasted with that. But I do think the vast majority of guys, if you ask them, hey, are you looking for some real commitment? If they clam up in any way and that answer is not
Mm,
directly yes, like a clear yes, then it's a no.
then you said no.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's important of a point like the when you were talking I was thinking about this point of like communication. Like I feel like death to like the chill girl who just goes with the flow. Like if you know what you want, it's okay to ask. Like I feel like I'm very direct in my communication. Like if it's like early stages of talking, like I won't be like hopefully too direct, but like if something happens, I'll usually kind of like casually bring it up or be like, "Hey, like so what's like the vibe here?" I don't know, but it's like
Yeah.
not something I think to bring up right away because you
I
can
think
always sense it.
that's
But if you're committed to someone and then you start feeling like it's mismatchy, I feel like then bringing it up is like
yeah.
a good. But again, it depends on the context because that's not something I would bring up right away because I usually just like to like not like test the waters a bit and see what vibe he's giving off
See, but
before I even
I think
ask.
you put out what that would be really tough for me. What you put out is when the ball's fully in your court, where you have to be that one to first. If so, like you said, hey, what are you looking for from this?
Mm-hmm.
As a guy, like I don't want to say more than what you're gonna feel. Like I don't want to be like I'm so into you. Like I would love to date. If
Mm,
you're gonna be like, oh, I'm just not there yet. But if you said, hey, like I'm looking for a relationship, like I think this is going great. Like, do you see this long term, or is this something that
mm,
you're still figuring out? Now that you've clearly stated your feelings and your intentions, it's very easy for me. And I
okay.
think that I would, if I am, I'm gonna very clearly say yes. But again, if a guy is not interested, that answer is going to be murky or no. But if it's a yes,
Yeah.
it's just a yes usually.
So it's falling on the woman to be a little vulnerable
Yeah,
first.
men
But
are.
you know what? I will say something that I'm proud of myself for is like I'm okay doing that. Like if I like someone, I'm okay like expressing that because I feel like for me it's like what do I have to lose? Like if they don't feel it back, okay. That's okay. Like I'll be fine.
Yeah,
Like
but
obviously my feelings might be hurt, but it's like I would rather feel like I can put myself out there and like be a bit vulnerable than feel like I'm waiting around for him to say something.
so can I ask you a question about that? Because
Yeah.
I mean, knowing you now, like you're very like you have put yourself out there in a variety of different situations. So like, and you do come across as a very confident individual. So my question is like, have you always been that way, or have you ever been more timid? And if you have, and if you, because you've obviously evolved, like what advice would you give to someone who doesn't feel that confidence that you're describing right now, where they
Mm.
don't feel comfortable putting their feelings out there when they don't know the return that they're going to get?
Yeah. Honestly, I used to really struggle with expressing how I felt, like especially in friendships even, like if someone upset me, I would just like not say anything. And I would say I really grew in like my first more serious relationship, like in university. I feel like that person helped me come out of my shell a bit, and he would really push me to like say how I was feeling. Like if he could tell I was upset, he'd be like, "No, like we have to talk about this."
Right.
So I think that comfort of like having that person kind of help me open up, and then I obviously started to learn like, oh, it's actually like feels good to be able to like express myself.
Yeah.
But in terms of someone who maybe doesn't have a partnership to kind of play off of, I feel like I've read a lot of books that have helped me. One which was really profound to me was called A Gentle Reminder.
Mm.
And it's kind of talking about like, you know, what if this season of life is like not about love? Or what if like people are giving you here to give you lessons? And she kind of keeps saying like, I dare you to just like keep your heart open, be vulnerable, because the right people are going to stay with you. And I feel like that kind of goes back to the idea of like, if someone is for you, you can't like mess it up. If putting yourself out there is going to result in a person leaving or like not being down, I feel like it's better to know that sooner than later. Whereas if you just keep going along and you really like this person but you don't say anything, what if they don't feel it but it's been months and now you're way more attached? So
Mm.
for me, I always look at it as like, I'll either get the response I'm hoping for and that's great, but if I don't, it's like better sooner than later. And that has helped me be more vulnerable with people, I guess.
You said that so eloquently. Like I feel when you were saying that, I had to kind of hold in my laugh because I was picturing myself on what I would say to like a friend that was like, I don't know if I, and I feel like guys just take that approach. Just go for it, bro. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You know, it's
Yeah.
just. But I think the bigger issue with that is that, you know, as two people that are, I guess, confident and comfortable in themselves, it can be real easy to like project your confidence and comfortability on other people. But the reality is not everyone feels, you know, that self confidence, that confidence
Yeah.
to put themselves out there, and like I struggle with, I guess, giving like a differentiated type of advice to people based off, you know, their personality.
Mm.
And I don't know, I think guys do take this like homogenous approach with all of their guy friends, and like guys can be different too. Like some guys are super rambunctious and, you know, outgoing, but there are guys that are a little bit more, you know, reserved, as you know, the guys that you're into, you know, sensitive, and you
Maybe.
know, yeah, maybe they don't have that same outgoing personality. And yeah, I was just curious on like how you would approach that with someone like that as a friend.
Mhm. I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard because I also don't feel like I'm always the most outgoing person. Like, I
Sure.
feel like I have to remind myself or like practice being outgoing. Like, sometimes I super am not, and I'm very like keep to myself. And then I'm like, oh, I should have tried to put myself out there. So I do feel like it takes courage to like put yourself out there. But yeah, I feel like you don't have to like pour your heart out, but I think just saying like, hey, so far like I'm feeling like I'm liking how this is going, like how do you feel? And like even just opening it in a where you're like not saying too much,
Yeah.
but then you can kind of see how the person reacts.
But I think sometimes people don't even get to that point, right? Where they haven't expressed their feelings, and maybe they've only hung out as friends, maybe they've gone on a first date, whatever it is. And I think that I've heard lots of people give advice. Like, I've heard this at work. There's like a coworker where, you know, she's really into this guy, and I heard another female coworker say to her, "Well, if he's interested, like he'll make it clear to you, like, you know, you're
Yeah.
worth this, like make sure someone feels you're worth." And my question is like, for those more reserved people who don't want to make that first move, is that okay to kind of take that complacent approach and be like, if it's meant for me, like as you're describing, it'll happen?
Mm.
Or does everyone at some point in their life have to be assertive and try to go get what they want?
Yeah, okay. I read this in this book that I'm bringing all the books, but this one book, it talks about how life, like, okay, you don't have to like search for love, but life will present it to you and like open the door at some point, and then
Right.
it's up to you to walk through the door.
Mm.
So if you see someone and you're like, holy crap, like this person is like they've, stunned you or something, it's like it's up to you to like do something with that. Like the universe has presented this person to you now, like it's still your job to do something. So I feel like in that sense, I would say it can go both ways of it can be the guy or the girl to make the first move, but I think it's more important of like how they respond. Like if I make a first move and it's not responded well, then I will be like, okay, I will not ever try to approach that person again, I guess.
Right.
Because I guess that's the same ego thing of like, oh, doesn't seem like they're interested. And I think that's the same. If a guy makes a first move and the girl doesn't seem interested, I could see how he would lose interest or not have the courage to like keep pursuing that. Like sometimes you hear like, oh, if he wanted to, he would keep
Right.
pursuing. But it's like, it shouldn't have to always be this game where
Exactly.
you have to chase her. Like I think she should show at least some interest. So for me, it's like it should be mutual, at least at some point. But it's complicated because it's not always mutual right away. And yeah, but like I just think life is short. Like if you really see someone that's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to let this pass me by," then like yeah, it's up to you to try to do something with
Yeah,
that, I guess.
I completely agree with that, honestly.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up I guess with one last question. And this is on like, do you have any guy friends who are still single in like the friend group? And if so, do you feel like either they've expressed it or do you like get the sense sometimes that they feel left out or that they're like, oh, like I just want to meet the person, like whatever? Because I'm bringing this up because I feel like I'm almost the last one of all my friends with who's not in a
Mm.
relationship. But it's like I don't have necessarily one big friend group where I'm like feeling left out or anything,
Right.
but I just was
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, I do have a friend who is still single, and I think, there are different approaches to this. Like I was one of the last of my friends to be in a relationship. And I remember for me personally, like I super struggled with that. Like I didn't want to leave a past relationship like that was not working by any means because I just didn't want to be the single guy. And then when I was
Mm.
single, I did feel super, I just wasn't, I didn't like that. I didn't like being the guy that was around all these couples. And it, yeah, made me feel self conscious in a certain kind of way. But I do think there are some guys, and I'm sure there's women like this too. There definitely is women like this. Like my one friend who is single, it does not impact his experience. Like he's unapologetically
Okay.
himself. He still acts around the guys the way he would, regardless if the girlfriends were there or not. So it is. I do think it is tough, but some guys are better at dealing with that than others. Why?
Okay.
How's it for you?
So, um, yeah, it's okay. Like, I don't feel like I'm surrounded by couples. The thing is, like, I don't have, it's not really like a group of friends where everyone's hanging out and it's couples and me ever.
Right.
Like, I feel like I tend to hang out with my friends, like, more in like one on one or like in small group settings. So it's
Okay.
just the girls, anyways. But one thing I'll say is like, I think it could be nice to have like single friends to like go out with.
Sure.
But I also don't go out that much anymore that
Yeah.
I like it doesn't really bother me. But
Yeah.
then I'm like, wait, should I be going out? Like I feel like I don't know. It's like this weird in between of I don't really enjoy like going out, staying out late, partying, so it's like doesn't really bother me, but like once in a while that is fun.
Yeah. So I'm curious though, if you did, like, we do have a group of friends where we all hang out with our girlfriends, and then my one friend just he hangs out with us too, and we're all one big group. And
Yeah.
that's never dissuaded him from hanging out with us. Like
Okay.
if you did have a group of friends and they were all, with their partners, would you feel comfortable joining them if you were the
Um
one single person?
yeah, I think if I knew everyone, like if I don't know, I think if we're all friends, it's like okay. But I feel like it depends on what it is. If it's just like a night we're hanging out, then yeah, I feel like that'd be fine
Okay,
and
cool.
it wouldn't really bother me. Yeah, but it's like I feel like I do have some guy friends who are still single. So like in that situation where there's like a big mix of people, I know I'm not the only like single one.
Right.
But Yeah, I think maybe it would bother me if it was like every single time we hang out, it's like all the couples and me.
Yeah.
But that's not really, I guess, the situation. So I'm
Yeah.
like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see how that would be maybe frustrating. But I think it depends too, is like if your friends are constantly on you, like sometimes my friends, like I have a friend who's constantly like, so like, are you back on the apps or like how's it going? And I'm always like, yeah, not, nothing to tell you. But it's like the friends who will push on it and like
Yeah.
constantly bombard you with, hey, are you dating? Are you seeing anyone? I think that's when it starts to get in your head a little bit. Because when I'm not thinking about it, I don't really feel like I'm missing out.
Yeah. I think I'm definitely guilty of doing that. Like, I think
Mm,
a lot of times, even when you're in a relationship, you project your insecurity of not being in a relationship on your friends who are comfortable. Like my friend who is single has told us repeatedly, "I'm just not looking for something right now. Like I'm content with my life
yeah.
the way it is." But it's part of it is I think you feel some I don't know if
You're
it's
like, really?
empathy.
How?
Yeah, but it's also like
Yeah.
you want what's best for them. You're like, I know you'll be so happy in a relationship and you can push, but
Mm,
I think it's important that we learn to respect people's wishes and and accept what people are comfortable with. If they're fine, then you don't need to push something on them, right? And yeah,
yeah, definitely.
yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to kind of wrap this up here. How do you feel this went? I think this was pretty good for our
Yeah,
first
this is
one.
fun. I think we need to let the people know. We're going to be doing this monthly, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
deal. But it's not always
Yeah.
going to be dating, right? We're going to take a
No.
variety of different approaches.
Yeah, so the goal is definitely to get some new topics and stuff and then just like obviously have our chat about it. So if anyone has suggestions too, like definitely leave us a comment about what you want to hear from us. I'll probably leave another poll up at some point so people
Yeah.
can
And
hopefully drop
I
some
would love to get some
questions.
follow up. Like I would love to hear what people think. If people think, I'm coming from a terrible perspective, women and men. Like, do people agree with what we're saying? Do they disagree? Like, maybe we can have a section
Yeah.
where we follow up with some people.
Yeah, and of course, like again, like Jordan mentioned, we're just two people, so it's just like our experience and we're not
Yeah,
experts, so take our advice with a grain of salt, but I feel like we try to be well-rounded.
yeah. We're cool
Anyways.
people.
Yeah, we're cool people. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for listening. Jordan will be back next month and we'll do another he said she said. So, bye.
See ya.